Welcome back, dear listener, to the Maiden to Mother podcast. I am Zara, and I'm very grateful to have you here. In this space, we speak about all the things that have to do with the transition into motherhood. And this podcast is called the Maiden to Mother podcast, but I haven't really gone deeply into what the maiden and the mother are. And today I felt inspired to do like a deep dive into the maiden and the mother archetypes and what this means and what the transition means. And I am feeling a little bit sick today, so I hope you won't hear me coughing too much, but I have my tea. And on the other hand, I do hope the audio quality will improve because I'm seated in our closet. So let's see how that works. It's kind of cozy in here. So the maiden and the mother archetypes, these are actually archetypes that can be found, representations of these archetypes can be found all over the world in indigenous folk cultures. And they might not really, it's not like all these cultures have the exact same description or the exact same image of what the maiden is and what the mother is. But you do see similarities from cultures across the world. And even though today in our Western society in Europe, where I'm based, we have lost much of the indigenous traditions and cultures, even today, mainly through Christian traditions, we see these representations of the maiden and the mother coming back. And I'm not really a fan of how Christianity has influenced Europe and has influenced our culture. And I think to this day, I didn't intend on going so dark straight away, but I think to this day, even in Sweden, we see the remnants of a very misogynistic culture around Christianity. And of course, you can discuss it. Is that the religion? Is it culture? But so I do think that the Christian representations of the maiden and the mother are really like from a male gaze and from an unbalanced male gaze. And today, through this podcast, I also would like to reclaim these archetypes as something useful, something beautiful for women, and for, I think, an understanding of these archetypes on a deeply indigenous spiritual level can help us to understand ourselves better and actually reclaim our power as women in this world. And before I go deeper into the actual maiden archetype and the mother archetype, I would like to explain that these are archetypes that are part of a woman's life cycles and how I see it. And I've been making artwork around this, but I haven't finished. Sometimes during my bleed, I had my bleed last week, I like to make menstrual art. So yes, this is actual making art, painting with my menstrual blood, which is something that I have done for a while and felt inspired to do by a woman on Instagram called Jasmine Alicia Carter. She started this big movement of menstrual art. And so you can definitely look her up if you're like, what the hell are you talking about? I can highly, highly recommend it. It's been such a beautiful, powerful, just deep practice for me to also, because it feels edgy, right? There's so many taboos around our menstrual blood, so many taboos around our cyclicality as women, our menstruation in general. And I think through painting with our menstrual blood, we can just take our power back and take the power back that I see is in our cyclicality and in our menstruality as women. But going on a little side track here, maybe I will record another separate podcast about menstruation in general. This is one of my favorite topics, actually. But where was I? So as women, we go through different stages in our lives, and I see as our life begins actually when we're born, right? Then we're a baby. And I think the first phase of our life can be called child, like we are the child. And then we have our first bleed. During puberty, we have our first bleed, which is called menarche. This is the term for our first bleed as women. Then when we have our menarche, we become the maiden. We step into the maiden archetype and the maiden phase of our life. And then the end of the maiden phase is usually marked by a birth of a child, but it doesn't have to be. It's basically the transformation from the immature feminine into the mature feminine that is represented by the mother archetype. And so then you have the mother phase of our life as a woman. And again, you don't necessarily have to become a mother. This can also mean that it's usually the mother phase. I'll go more deeply into this, but it can also be that you're producing something else in the world, that you're bringing something into the world as a mature woman during the mother phase. And then after the mother phase, we usually have our menopause. And this is my interpretation. After menopause and around menopause, we go into our maga phase of life. And then after the maga, we go and kind of transcend how I see our physicality as women. Our physical body is slowly, we're getting older, less, physically strong, less, I think, I'll have to reflect on this more, but what is happening is a transcendence. And during that transcendence, there is less emphasis on our physical body, and we become the crone. And the crone archetype is really like the final stage of a woman's life. She is really, really wise. And the crones are usually what you see are the wise women, the healers, the shamanesses of the villages, of the tribes. And how I like to see it, there's actually another phase or stage, and that is actually when we die. So death is the final rite of passage, and we become our ancestor. We become an ancestor. And I think this is important to include as well. So just to repeat it again, from an ancestor, we become a child through birth. From a child, we become the maiden through menarche, and from the maiden through either birth of a child or birth of something else into the world, we become the mother archetype. From the mother through menopause, we become the maga, and from maga through transcendence of the physical, we become the crone, and from the crone through death, returning to the earth, we become an ancestor. And this life cycle of a woman is also, it's happening throughout the life of a woman, right from like age 0 to however old you become, let's say 90. And this is a long life cycle, but these life cycles also come back in all of nature. You can see representations of these seasons of life, right through the seasons. And as women, we have this special connection to nature and to the seasons of life through our monthly menstrual cycles, at least in the maiden, mother, and perhaps part of the maga phase of our lives. We have our monthly menstrual cycle where we also go through like a mini version of these phases and stages. So then when we are a child and a maiden, this can be seen as inner spring. And when we are a mother, it can be seen as the peak. And I forgot to say, when we are in the child and maiden phase of our menstrual cycle, this can be the inner spring, but I mean the follicular phase. So this is when when our womb and our ovaries are preparing an egg to be possibly fertilized. And then their mother phase is represented by our ovulation phase. So when we're actually ovulating at the peak of our fertility, lots of young energy. And this can be seen as inner summer. And I hope I'm still making sense. Like, I will definitely this menstrual art I've been making is putting everything onto a map, right? Into a wheel of life, a circle, so that you can actually see it visually, because otherwise maybe it doesn't make so much sense. But I'll still continue for the poetic ones of you that do follow. So our mother archetype in our menstrual phase is represented by ovulation, and then we move into the maga phase, which I see as the luteal phase or the premenstrual phase. And this is also our inner autumn. So this is when the energy starts going down again. And then the final phase is our menstruation, and this can be seen as the crone phase, and how I see it, the ancestor, when we actually die. And this is also what's happening in our womb. It's like the shedding of the uterine lining. If the egg hasn't been fertilized, it's a time of death, of shedding, of returning back to the earth, kind of this type of energy. And so in this podcast, we are really zooming into this transformation from the maiden to the mother. But I just wanted to give you like an overview of like, what is this actually, what we're talking about here in a bigger picture. And so the maiden to mother, this is really, really a beautiful stage in a woman's life, and really transformational, especially if a woman becomes a mother. And so let us go into the actual maiden and the mother archetype, starting with the maiden archetype. The maiden archetype is usually, the beginning is menarche, so the first bleed, and it will end when she gives birth, possibly to a project or to a child or to work or whatever. And so there are like often many years in between where a woman goes through menstruation for the first time. Usually in the beginning of the maiden stage, there will be irregular cycles because the hormones are still trying to find a rhythm. This is completely normal, but completely pathologicalized. I don't know if that's a word, or medicalized in this modern world, unfortunately. But this is traditionally, in many cultures, this is a time when a woman is for the first time a woman, right? She's not a child anymore. She's becoming a woman, but she's not quite a mature woman yet. And this archetype really stands for, this is a youthful energy. It's like an upwards energy, as we see during the spring. It's like an awakening of some sort of, the maiden is discovering, who am I? What am I in the world? What do I want to become? And how do I relate to other people in this world? And she is usually quite playful and explorative. And these are all like, if she is allowed to really go into to express that maiden archetype. And she really also stands for youth and for beauty. And this is also where often it's becoming kind of like a shadow side as well in our society, where there's like this hyper obsession on the maidens because they are the virgins, they are the beauty, they have the beauty and the youthfulness and the innocence. And yeah, in through a patriarchal lens, this can become very toxic. But if a maiden is allowed to really explore herself and feels free to do that, she will be very playful and exploring herself. Who is she? Who is she? Also, her sexuality, of course, is unfolding. And she can also be a little bit naive, because she is so like focused on the light and the bright side of things, and she is kind of getting in touch with her power, right? She feels like everything is possible. But she can also be sometimes naive through the lack of life experience of the realities and the harsh realities of life. And again, that life comes with ups and downs, right? And for me, this showed up as, luckily in the Netherlands, I didn't feel very repressed. I felt quite free to explore myself and my sexuality and just who I was in the world. I was very adventurous, and I was very curious, creative, and I was enjoying to learn a lot and had these huge, big plans. And I think also what I see as a shadow side that showed up for me in my maiden years was like a kind of like a self-centeredness of like, what do I want to be in the world? Like, it was a lot about me, and what I wanted and the impact that I wanted to have in the world. And yeah, I think it's beautiful. And I'm sending all the love to my younger years and when I was still a maiden. I'm just tuning into if there's anything else I want to reflect on when it comes to the maiden. Oh yeah, for me, what also, and I think for many women of my generation, during the maiden years, there can be a lot of, for me, New Age spirituality was a big part of my life. Although I wouldn't really label it, I wasn't really aware that was what it was, the New Age spirituality movement. But I was focusing on yoga and meditation and self-development, and in a way that was beautiful, but also really like focusing on improvement and self-improvement and getting better at meditating and getting better and more, awakened. And how I see it now is like the maiden type of spirituality can be very much upward focused and like the universe focused. I was watching a lot of things about the law of attraction and manifesting, and like I would like set my intentions towards the universe, and it was really like love and light. And I will put this in perspective into how my spiritual practice is today, or my spirituality, that it has completely shifted now that I am moving into the mother archetype. And I think a shadow of that maiden version of spirituality can be spiritual bypassing, can be an avoidance of darkness and death that is part of life. And just within the focusing on the positive and the universe and the, that type of spirituality, it can be negligent towards our own inner darkness and the darkness around us. And we think that through hyperly focusing on the positive, we will create more of that. But within that, we're also sometimes perpetuating certain harm that is done through our inner shadows, but we don't want to shed light on that. And for me, I think before even I was pregnant, I was already starting to explore like different types of spirituality and wanting to, and I think mainly through getting interested in my menstrual cycle and the ebbs and flows and the death and the life cycles that were happening every month within my body. Or not really every month, because my cycle was quite irregular and long. But on a regular basis, going through those cycles, I was really interested in my menstrual cycle and how menstruation is really, if we really tune into that, is really a downwards type of spirituality, if that makes sense. So instead of focusing on the universe, we're focusing on the earth and the plants. And I think through the practice also of herbalism, I was really grounding my spirituality down and my energy down into my body and putting more focus on the earth and the plants. And so I was already shifting a little bit away from that love and light really maiden, naive type of energy, even before I discovered that I was pregnant, and then, that whole transformation. So let us move to the mother archetype. And she, through a Christian lens and the remnants of that Christian culture that we still have to this day, is that she really stands for the mother, and like she is, in that sense, taking care of the children. She is traditionally meant to produce children and take care of them, and that was her main focus. And actually, I think in pagan and indigenous traditional cultures worldwide, this was really never the only sole focus of the mother in her mother years. This is a concept that was really, perhaps through the last, I don't know, maybe since the 60s, I guess, in the West. A quick correction there, that it wasn't in the 60s, but I think in the early 1900s that the role of the housewife as we know it today was created, and that the sole role of mothers was to be taking care of the house, do the household, and take care of the children without so much involvement of the other person, and without her kind of being allowed to engage in other roles or jobs. And this was, before that time, never really the case. And I was speaking to one of my many Moroccan cousins, and she was describing this really beautifully, how the Western mother is just so suppressed in a way, that like what is expected of her, and that she is just supposed to be the perfect mother and taking care of the house and cooking and cleaning, and needs to look beautiful too. And this is really only like a modern concept in our weird society, as I see it. And she was saying that in Morocco traditionally, the mothers, and I think in Muslim culture, the mothers were always doing much more and running businesses from the home. And really, I think also the community tenderers, if that makes sense, community builders, taking care of the community through different ways, like the healers and the midwives and herbalists and all these tasks, as well as businesses selling things, perhaps traditionally potteries, clothes, all those things. Sidetracking here again. So taking it back through, just want to make you aware that perhaps the image that you have as maybe perhaps you're a Western woman listening to this podcast, the lens that you have of the mother archetype may be really influenced by Christian kind of patriarchal values. But the mother archetype, how I see it, is really the mature feminine. The maiden is she is really, is like slowly becoming a woman, but she isn't really like mature yet, because she's still very much developing and exploring who she is. And as a mother, usually if we go through the rite of passage from maiden to mother, if we go through birth in a way with ritual and ceremony, and that makes sense physiologically, spiritually, emotionally, we really can step into our full power as a woman. And the mother archetype is also the one where perhaps she has the most energy, because again, if we reflect it back, compare it back to our menstrual cycles, this is the time of ovulation. And if we reflect it to the seasons, this is the time of summer. And I think if you already are a mother, you can relate to this, because that being a mother is so intense. It's so much continuously going, and we're putting out so much into the world, like through our children, but usually also as mothers, we're doing many other things. It's really a young phase of our life. And the mother archetype, she is really caring. I think where the maiden is more self-centered and trying to get something, the mother archetype is more selfless. And she realizes that she is interdependent on the community, and therefore she takes good care of the community, not just her children, but also and her family, but also the extended community. And I think the mother is often selfless, but this can also be a shadow, of course, where she takes too much care of other people without really tending to her own needs. And I think this is also a concept in our modern society, unfortunately, where this shadow comes up a lot because we are so individualized. So before, we would all, as mothers, also take care of other mothers. And yeah, I think I see many mothers doing this, where they're trying to really also take care of other people, because if we are all just focused on ourselves, and this is also a bit of what I was saying about the New Age spirituality and the maiden type of thinking, is like, well, if I just feel good, I am gonna give from a full cup. But if we all do that, it becomes very much like self-focused, self-centered, and a bit selfish, versus if we all would help each other filling up our cups, we would honor our genetic blueprint that is deeply dependent on other people, and we would automatically fill up each other's cups in a way that really honors our physiology as humans. This is also a concept that I guess I could record a whole other podcast on, but yeah, so the maiden, the mother archetype, like, she really takes care usually of many other people, and also from a place of wanting, right? If she really is able to step into her power, she will have a lot of energy, and she will want to put a lot of things out into the world. And yeah, I think this has been a really beautiful shift for me, where before it was really about self-care, but now I see that through taking care of my child, and through taking care of my family, and through taking care of my community, I'm also automatically taking care of myself, and my cup is also being filled up. But of course, I also still need to prioritize myself as well, and not become overly giving, because this is definitely a shadow of the mother archetype that comes up a lot. Let us talk a little bit about the transition, because of course the transition and the rite of passage from maiden to mother is often birth. And for me, of course, this was going through, well, there was a bit of a phase where it's like, okay, maybe I'm slowly getting ready for, within the next couple of years, get pregnant and finding that intimacy with my partner in a new way. And then, becoming pregnant and carrying that baby. And this in itself, of course, is a huge rite of passage, where for 9 months we are seeing a baby growing in our belly, and then birth. And of course, birth can be, it doesn't have to be for every woman, but most often it's a big challenge. It's a huge portal that a woman goes through. And some people say that this is for a reason. It is to prepare the woman for motherhood and for the realities of motherhood. Like, she is being challenged and awakened, and the challenge within birth that she faces can be something that she needs to let go of in order to step into her mother archetype and step into the role of the mother in a more smooth way, so to say. And I think for me, what I was faced with during birth was my perfectionism and my rigidity, my rigid ways of thinking before becoming a mother, that I needed to let go of, because as a mother, you can have this perfect image in your mind of how you want to do it, but you realize pretty soon that you cannot do everything perfectly, and that you need to soften your ways of thinking, because otherwise you'll break yourself down as a mother if you're trying to do it all perfectly in a certain way. And also, I think we need to honor that the child that comes through us has their own, perhaps, plan, so that you can also learn from that child and grow. And yeah, I think in the maiden years, we don't realize often, especially my generation, I'm 30 now, like I'm from 94. I think, we often think we're so educated and we're so modern and we're going to do all the things. We're going to do it better than our own parents. But then you realize, like, when I became a mother, at least, wow, it is just so hard and so intense and it never stops, So I at least really gained a lot of respect for my parents and much more compassion. And I think this compassion also is sometimes something that comes up during birth. Like, well, yeah, maybe my birth didn't go exactly as I planned it. Usually it doesn't go as planned. But you know what? It's okay. And I'm still going to give myself love for how I overcame those challenges. And yeah, that compassion is so needed. And often also birth can be it is really an opening of the body and an opening of the heart, of course. And this is also why in many cultures there are rituals and ceremonies around this important transition in a woman's life. And examples of these are closing the bones, which they also do in Morocco, which is where I think multiple women will wrap a woman up physically and kind of swaddle her from head to toe to close her body and the portal that she became during birth, to birth this child into existence. And while this is believed to have physical benefits of like bringing the bones together and kind of bringing the body back to the pre-pregnancy state, it's also, of course, emotionally and spiritually really important to have other women take you through that process and through ritual, finding some sort of wholeness in this new phase of your life, and also being guided by women that have already gone through this rite of passage. This is super, super meaningful, and one of the things that is really missing, of course, from modern motherhood are these rituals around becoming a mother, so that what I really felt when I became a mother was just this kind of like unsettledness, ungroundedness, not knowing who I was becoming, and it just felt so huge. I think part of the reason why is because I didn't have somebody holding my hand through the process, and no ceremonies around it or rituals. Of course, I created my own rituals, for example, through yoni steaming and stuff. But yeah, traditionally through cultures around the world, we would all, as women, as other mothers and magas and crones, we would take really good care of the woman in this huge transformation, because it is such a vulnerable but also powerful and important transition in a woman's life. Yeah. And I think a result, what we see of this lack of ceremony and ritual around this around birth for a woman, it shows up as mothers who have actually children, but still are very much in their maiden archetype. And so we wanna keep living the life that we lived before we became a mother. And how I see this often is that we try to, as new mothers, avoid the shift that it is, and what it means to be taking care of a child 24/7 is, well, I think one of the shadows as this shows up as in society is, oh, well, we will just outsource the care of our child to someone else so that I can then go back to my old life. And there's no judgment around this, because I very much understand, because it's just so hard to face the actual transformation, the actual huge shift that your life is. And I definitely felt that I wanted to go back to my old life sometimes, especially in the beginning. And so we try to kind of avoid becoming somebody else, and we try to stay in the mother archetypes and do all the things and do all the working out in the same way and meet the same people, and still being in this young kind of adventurous and explorative phase of our life, and also productive in that sense. Yeah, and the lack of ceremony and ritual really prevents us from stepping into our full power as a new person, almost stepping into this new phase of life that comes with other beautiful things, that comes with even more, what I really now start to feel for the last couple of months is I'm much more productive. I'm much more creative. I feel really connected to my power because I finally, after these 2 years, I am starting to integrate the experience and starting to really feel like I'm stepping into my mother archetype and letting go of my old ways of being. I'm no longer trying to find my way back to the things that I wanted to do as a maiden. I'm no longer trying to get back to my long morning routines in solitude. I'm no longer trying to get back to the amount of time that I used to have for myself, because I'm embracing, well, now I get to spend this time with my beautiful child, and I get to see him grow up. I get to see his lovely, wonderful face, and I just love my child so much. And there's so much more space now for that love, because I feel I've accepted that I will never be that old person anymore. And of course, I will sometimes still miss the freedom that I had in my maiden years. But I am much more embracing of all the beauty that comes with this phase of my life. And also, there is some sorrow already within that I know that in a couple of years my son won't be this young anymore, and I'm probably gonna miss this phase of my life. So really trying to be more present within this beautiful stage of my life, even though it can be so intense at times. And I think part of the reason, honestly, that I've been able to accept and find more joy in motherhood is also that I'm getting much better sleep and sleeping better, sleeping longer, and of course that I'm getting more help now with the care of my child. Perhaps also that we are expected as these modern Western women to take fully responsibility of taking care of our child, and on top of that, the house, and often working and all these things. We're just simply doing too much, and we don't have any time to integrate the experience and the transformation, because we're just, we don't have time to pause. And I just keep coming back to the importance of our menstrual cycle and how this can really become a way to, if we tune into the ebbs and flows of our feminine body and our cycles, we can really then, for example, during menstruation and pre-menstruation, take more time for ourselves when our body is naturally craving more of a slow energy. And also then, not resting necessarily away from our children, but how can we actually also teach our children that we go through these life cycles and phases, and that we don't always have to keep going, and that, perhaps they also need some time, once a month, a day at least, where they are not as much stimulated and where they get to rest with their mother or father. And yeah, I think it's extremely important that even though the mother stage of our life is extremely intense and is a lot of young energy, that we still, if we want to keep doing that for a while and not burn ourselves out, that we do take time to rest, of course. And I think as mothers, as maidens, we didn't realize how much time we had to rest until we became mothers. And also just want to zoom in a little bit more on what it means for women who don't become a mother. Then I think this can be really beautiful, because of course, if you don't spend that energy during the mother years of your life on raising children, that means that you probably have much more energy to go on other adventures, and maybe not adventures, because that is definitely something more characteristic of the maiden archetype, but I mean endeavors and creating beautiful projects. Usually, if a woman is somewhat in tune with her own nature and with nature around her, she will do something positive with that, with the compassion that she feels for the world and for the people. And so this can be really productive stage of your life where there is a lot of output. And yeah, I think that can be really, really beautiful, especially also as, for example, midwives and doulas. If you don't have children, if you decide to, or you're not able to have children, that I just think it's so beautiful. And I'm not saying that you have to do something like this if you don't become an actual mother, but it can be so beautiful when you do have more energy and freedom to actually take care of other mothers and the community in a different way. Yeah, I think I have shared what I wanted to share, and I really hope that this has given you a little bit of a better picture of what I mean, at least with the maiden archetype and the mother archetype, and what the transformation could look like. And I think it's really, lastly, really important that we bring back more ritual and ceremony, and that we learn the old ways. That how were we actually tending to pregnant women? How were we tending to births? How were we taking care of the postpartum mother? And this is just such an important time. And through that, through nourishing this stage of a woman's life, we are also then automatically taking care of the next generation, because of course the child that this woman births will be affected by either the presence or the absence of nurture and care and ritual and ceremony. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for spending your valuable, precious, scarce time in these days to tune into my voice and my podcast and my sharings. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you share it with another mother, another daughter, another sister, and perhaps leave a review. And I would also love to hear your reflections. So if you want to send me a message, you can do that either through my email or my Substack, which is provided down below. All right, have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, and I will hopefully see you in the next episode.